we've known each other both since we had dark hair. So
Yeah.
there we go. But anyway, so Roberta's going to be talking to me for the next hour about, I don't know, a variety of different things. There's a lot of things we can talk about. And we'll talk about your history in improv so people who are not familiar with you, although I think most people are, will be able to play along. And as we talk, as usual, if you have a question or a comment or whatever, feel free to share it in our Facebook Live chat. And I'll talk about the shows and everything that are coming up towards the end of the hour. But I want to jump right in. Oh, and also, again, as we say every week, if you enjoy what you're seeing and would like to make a donation, we would love to get a donation. So do that.
Could they make a donation to me too?
Uh, let me see what kind of change I have laying around. I'll get it to you.
Okay.
So Roberta, let's turn back the pages of time and go back to how you got started in improv, which is something I ask most people. But I mean, one of the things I definitely want to touch upon is you were, in many ways, in many facets, involved in improvisation in Chicago during a really interesting time, not only for within the gender times, but also the war, the Vietnam War, and things like that. So I definitely want to touch upon those things. But how did you just personally find improvisation? Did it just fall out of the sky?
When I was in Chicago, which is where I'm from, um, um, there was a guy named Dan Sorkin on the radio. Am I on? Okay. And I was going to show you. Look what I can do. I can change my light. Isn't that cool? I think it's too white.
Right.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there. That's good. Okay. And Dan Sorkin used to play records by Second City when I was in high school. And I said, boy, that's what I'm going to be. They weren't improvised, but they were members of Second City. And so I never wanted to do anything else, but I'm so lucky that I could do what millions of people want to do, want to be in Second City. And so I was in a play in Chicago, and and there was a guy named Bob Curry who was at the show, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, I have a group in Highland Park, and it's called the New Old Fashioned Baroque Compass Players, and giving credit to all the places he'd been. And here's a picture of them. See if I can get the, and here's Bob Curry in the middle.
Right.
And funniest, sweetest guy. And after our shows, and we really delved in that group. And after the shows,
that's you up there in the.
Let's see, where am I? Yeah, that's me. And this is the other Roberta Williams. And after our shows, Bob would whip off all his clothes and take his stand-up bass out. And he, as the audience was leaving, he would be standing there playing his stand-up bass naked. That's how cool we were.
Yeah, wow. We should revive that.
Yeah, I think that would be your job, Randy.
I better start learning how to play bass then, I guess.
And then
before we go on, and I want to continue with your history, but I'm trying to keep up here with at least some of the dialogue on Facebook. Val Walker, Ryan, and Brooke say hello, as do the LaValleys. So
Bill Walker?
I guess, yeah. Val Walker, yeah. Val Walker.
Oh, Val, my sister-in-law. Hi, Val. Hi,
Anyway,
Mikey.
so what were your impressions when it first started? Did you fall in love with it instantly? Did you find it difficult? Did you, question whether you wanted to keep doing it or what the?
I went down. He said, "Come down and do a show with us." And I said, "I can't do improv. Are you kidding?" And he said, "Well, come on down. Come on." I don't know what in his brain made him choose me, but there it is. And I went down and I did a show with them, my first show, and I was on stage for the first time. And we got the suggestion with a guy there, and we got the suggestion, I don't remember his name, and we got the suggestion of Antony and Cleopatra. So he immediately bent me way back over his arm, and he said, "I'm sorry, Cleopatra, I have to leave." And he left, and I just stayed bent over, and I said, "Is it because of my disability, Antony?" And I was hooked. That was it. And I didn't think up that line. It just popped into my mind, and I thought, whoa, this is fun.
Right. So then
that
so you pretty much, like a lot of people in the early days, you were doing both. You were kind of taking classes and being directed, but also then immediately jumping into shows and playing.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. What'd you say?
That you were both learning and performing at the same time, versus like now where people will go through schools and they'll form groups, but sometimes the groups don't stick together. And so oftentimes there's a little bit more learning curve before people get performing on a regular basis, but
Yes.
sort of a trial by fire, I guess.
Yes.
And
um, um, and there are some people who I've known of, I've probably taught thousands of people over the last 40 some years.
right.
And every once in a while, there's someone who can just do it without any training. They're just, they're generous and they listen and are kind and loving. And Del always said that's when he was interviewing people, he always looked for how generous the people were, not how clever and funny and fast, but how generous they were to the other people. And look, who's this?
Look at that. It really is.
That's Del Close, my great hero and teacher.
Right.
Yeah, get out of here. And so we did a workshop once, and this guy came in with his two friends. And this is still with Bob Curry's group down in Hyde Park. And this one guy was so funny and brilliant, and he had so much presence. And we thought, my God, you couldn't take your eyes off him no matter what he did. And guess who it was? It was John Belushi.
Huh.
He was just out of high school. And later on, somebody left in the cast I was in, and he was in my company for, not my, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Somebody criticized me once for calling our group here my group. He said, "Isn't your group, Roberta?" I thought, oh, take off. So I started doing some workshops at Second City. And I had a friend named Natalie Plotkin. I had been writing teacher's guides for what was it called? Coronet Films with the little crown.
Ornament
And-
Hills presents maybe.
right, exactly. And they, one of the films I worked on was How to Be Popular. And we brought one to Second City to dub one night, but we realized we couldn't be funnier than it was, the way it was. So I told her I was going to take workshops at Second City, and she said, "Oh, my sister's husband is going to take workshops there too. His name is Harold Ramis." And I thought, oh, that's nice. I knew him when he was nothing. You know, I knew him in
Right, and he could give you a ride, or you could give him a ride, I guess, but to the workshop.
I think we took a taxi together,
All right.
maybe.
And, so you're taking these workshops. Who is teaching the workshops? Do you remember?
Oh, bugger. You're going to ask me questions and I'm losing my mind. And so names, she was the big teacher there at the time.
Oh, was it Joyce?
No, Joyce never taught. She was the producer.
Right, right.
It was the woman who was their teacher for a long time, Joan or Janet or something.
Right.
Forgive me if you're still around. And our class was amazing. We had Brian Murray, who was Bill's older brother, and just a number of wonderful people. And it was such a good class that they put us in. They sent the company that was on the main stage to New York, and they put us in as the main stage company.
Right.
I'm sorry, I lied. First, we became the touring company. And one of my favorite tours was to, they sent us to a place in Kentucky called the Mousetrap. And we went there, and it was like a Playboy club, only the women had mouse ears and a mouse tail and their little costumes. And, you know, we did a show, and after the show, we sat in the bar and watched the first landing on the moon.
Right.
And here were these guys in the back. I mean, they hated us. I don't think we did a second show. We just left after that. And then some wag sent us to West Point. And this would have been 1968 or 9. And we had been doing shows on Mondays as the touring company. When the regular company was off, we did Monday nights. And we had this bit we did where we had this coffin that we all carried in together. And we came from the back of the theater and went up the aisle and went up on stage singing "Way Down Below the Ocean" by what's his name? You remember? I can't remember his name. Anyway, I can't names, excuse me, but they've just gone into some black hole in my head and I can't access them anymore. I'm old, Randy. Do you know how old I am?
Right. Well, from now on, I won't mention any names. I'll just say, and you know, that guy.
That guy. So we would come up on stage and we would set the coffin down and we would end our song and we would just stand there. And people would applaud wildly. So we did our show at West Point, and they loved it. They were laughing and screaming and standing on there, just loving us. And then we ended with our coffin scene. and brought it on stage and set it down and just stood behind it. Absolute silence. And we looked at each other and we said, let's get out of here. And we went off stage.
Grab the casket. Let's go.
Well, yeah, don't forget the casket. So that was kind of fun that they sent us to West Point.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things around that period just to reflect upon and kind of go a little bit deeper into some of the more subtle things that were going on. I mean, around that time, an amazing group of people, and eventually, pretty much en masse, right? You were then from the tour company became the main stage company.
Right.
And
Joe Flaherty joined then.
Right. Yeah. And over the course of time, just so many, I mean, well-known people at that time during a period that was very tumultuous, similar to our own times now. And here you are doing, comedy and satirical comedy in Chicago, and the convention being in Chicago in '68 and stuff like that. What was the atmosphere, not so much in Chicago, because that's well established, or if you're not familiar with it, get familiar with it, but in comedy around that time? So what was the atmosphere around the group? And was Bernie Solon still director at that point, or had Del come back?
Yes and no. We had a couple different directors, and then Bernie decided to take over, and he let Del come and do one scene in our show, which was based on Hamlet, which was his favorite play. And we were all backstage, which is where the play was going. And when we were killed, we'd pop onto stage, and we had these white sheets over us with little faces on them. And each of us would do a little song, and we couldn't leave this limbo until we'd gotten revenge. And we had a song called Revenge. And to this day, it's one of the most wonderful scenes I have ever been involved in. And it was my first experience of Del Close, and nobody but Del would attack things like that and deal with things like death and revenge and all that stuff, and make it funny. It was a lesson. It was a light bulb for all of us. And then he left because Bernie didn't want him. He wouldn't let him do more. Okay, Del was a junkie and an alcoholic, and he was just nuts. Okay. And but he was a genius. And I was gone when they brought him back to direct more shows, but I did his workshops after that for a couple years. And do your Randy, Randy, do your Del. You can do it. Say something Del would say. You do him so well. Come on.
Wow, I'm being pimped to do Del Close. Well, Roberta, it's good to have you here on the show and talking to you live on the internet. Something I didn't really get a chance to do when I was around.
He died. When did he die? 99?
99, yeah.
He was the smartest person I've ever known. And he would, his classes were wonderful because he would talk a lot. And he would talk about, like, he formed his improv exercises using scientific theories. And he talked about Stephen Hawking all the time. And this is back when Hawking was still talking. And I'd see him on television and he'd be talking about stuff. And sometimes Del would talk the whole 3 hours of the class. And people would be so pissed because they wanted to get up and improv. But I was fascinated. He said the most amazing things. Like he talked about threes in the universe. Twice isn't too many, isn't enough. 4 is too many. 3, and he created, as is my memory. Other people don't remember it this way, but that's how he created the Herald. We would do where there would be a bunch of people on stage, and we would do. Well, we started with 6, 2, 2, and 2, and we get a topic. And the first 2 would do a scene, and the second 2 would watch what they picked up on and do another scene about the same, and then the third group. And then we go through a second time and a third time. So it was like 3, 3, 3.
Right. Similar to the structured Herald now.
Yeah, the structured Herald. And then we did the free form after that, where you could just kind of do anything you wanted to do, which was great fun too.
Right. Well, he said in, I have him somewhere on tape, talking about the birth of the Herald, and he talks about how the key inspirations were the rule of 3, which he gave credit to, or being inspired by Buckminster Fuller, and then also film transitions. Yes. So,
yes. I just want to see you better for a minute. Oh, there you are. Yes, Buckminster Fuller. He was a pretty amazing guy, right. And was a lot of people at that time. The only way I can put it is there was so much information coming through. It was like in this world that was just filled. It was almost like honey. Everything you did or everywhere you went, there were these amazing ideas coming through that were new. Nobody had heard them before. So I think it was just that kind of time. And I think I was very lucky to be in Second City when I was. And I think most people loved laughing about stuff that was so heavy.
Right.
And Second City became like one of the most famous places around, the first improv place. And when I just gotten out of college, I used to go there and see their shows. And I was going to name some of my favorites, but of course I can't remember any of their names.
And then that woman, and then this person.
Yeah, that guy who was so funny. He was from Canada. David Steinberg. Oh God, he was great. And the woman.
Well, since you opened that door, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, because that period in Second City where it seemed like, well, it was decades, where like the cast was always 5 guys, 2 women, that kind of ratio. And here you are as one of these women. So, what was that like in terms of was the emphasis given to the guys, or was it more of an equal share because everyone's in the company, or, how did that work then? Because I know it started obviously when Second City started with the 50s and continued on until, gosh, I don't know, 80s?
It's still going, I think, although there's been a big shakeup. Anyway, what a cunning question, Randy.
Touché, Roberta.
Yes, it was always 5 men and 2 women. Did you say girls? Anyway. And one night, here, I'll start name dropping. One night, the stage manager ran backstage and he said, who's in the audience? Groucho Marx. And we said, yeah, right. And he said, no, I'm serious. He was giving a talk at Northwestern, and they took him out for dinner and they brought him here to see the show. it was like hysteria. Well, what should we do? What were our best scenes? And blah, blah, blah. And Harold Ramis, oh, Harold, just very calmly said, let's just do our show. And we did. And we went out to meet the great man afterwards. And one of the students leaned to us and said, he slept through the whole thing. And he was saying, you guys were great. Your material wasn't that great. Why don't you use some of our old stuff? Nobody will remember. And yeah, right. And he kept saying to Harold Ramis, is that really your nose? And Harold would just laugh. And he looked at Judy Morgan, the other of the two women, and he said to her, you were the prettiest. And he looked at me and he said, you were next. Oh, I went home and cried. And my boyfriend at the time, who had been the bass player in Spanky and our gang, he kept saying to me, he's just a mean old man, Roberta. Don't even. But, you know, I was way too vulnerable at that time. So, and in answer to your question, yes, Second City has been and still was. I knew someone who went there in the 90s, and she told me how, you know, it was just the guys. It was a guys club. And the girls were there just to be pretty. And I don't know why they let me in. I guess I was smart enough or something. But yes, and the attitude was, you could almost hear the guys saying it backstage. Oh, they're going to do a two-girl scene. Be ready to go on and save them. I mean, it wasn't even hidden. It was outrageous.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
It does. A cunning question, yes. So, and we might come back to Second City, but we eventually want to talk about Seattle Improv as well. So how did that transition happen? So you're ensconced in Second City. What happens, and then where you go from there?
Where do I go after Second City? Wait, I'm gonna.
What's that transition like? And yeah, and if you have pictures.
Here. That was us on the cover of
Wow.
the Tribune magazine.
Yeah.
That's Harold with the horns in the middle. He was so wonderful. And that's Brian Murray, and that's Judy and
Right.
Jim. God, I'm remembering their names. And that gorgeous thing was me. And who else? Oh, who's that? Oh, David. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of my favorite pictures. And people used to say, oh, it must have been fun to work there. It maybe was fun for some people. It wasn't fun for me. It was very scary. And if you didn't come up with a good scene during the improvs, you just weren't in the show. Because they would take scenes from the improvs that we did, and then we would rehearse and do those scenes over and over again and try to make them into a good scene. And sometimes we would try it on stage. And this was Dell's thing. He said, the second time you try to do an improv scene, it's terrible because you're not present. You're just trying to remember what you did before. And it was true. And people used to accuse Second City of cheating, that we weren't really doing improvs. And we were, but every once in a while we'd be trying to do one of these scenes.
Right. Right. So when did you leave Second City, or?
Let me tell you one more great political
Sure.
story about Second City. Yeah, it was the convention. It was the conspiracy trial. of the Chicago
Chicago 7.
Seven, and then I don't know, it became six. So something happened with Bobby something. And Abby Hoffman used to show up and do the improvs with us at night, which was great fun. The clown prince, you know, he'd do jumps and circles and into the courthouse and be on the cover of the paper every day. And one night he came and we decided to do the trial, which was going on at that time. He'd be there in the daytime and then come and do the improvs with us. And so we played the lawyers, and we got people in the audience to come up and be the jury. And the judge's name was Hoffman, interestingly enough. And we said, and now here's Judge Hoffman. And out walks Abby Hoffman with a choir robe and a rope over his shoulder. And the people just went wild. And they were taping shows back then. I have what I wouldn't give to see that tape. They probably just taped over it, you know, which they were doing too. But anyway, that was a great time. And kind of an honor that Abby Hoffman chose us to come and do it.
Well, yeah, the company around that time, I mean, not Second City Company, just company in general, people in general around the Chicago scene. Well, I guess in a lot of major cities was pretty impressive. And, you know, just the brains that were doing stuff. I heard part of, in fact, you're reminding me to look it up. And when I look it up, I will get you a link or a copy to it of, there's a website that has released all of Studs Terkel's interviews.
Oh.
And one of them is with Dell. And yeah, so I heard a little section of it, and I totally spaced on trying to find the entire hour-long interview or whatever it is, but I'll try to find it and get it to you. So
I just loved him. He came to all our shows, and they were doing his show working out here in Seattle when I moved here, early 80s. And the guy who was going to direct it was directing the next show. And, you know, I wanted to audition for it. And we were walking in, and he was, you know, around Studs. And I said, "Hi, Studs." He said, "Oh, Roberta." And he said to this director, "She's a great actor." And he didn't even hear him. And they just walked in. And I thought my life was made when Studs Terkel said I was a great actor.
right, that's a compliment. Yeah. So you came to Seattle in the, I thought it was the late 70s, wasn't it? Or I'm trying to remember your history, but and what brought you to Seattle, I guess?
Well, I left Chicago because well, I had co-founded a theater called Victory Gardens,
Which is still there. Yeah.
which is still there, and even won a Tony Award for the best regional theater long after we were gone. And Dennis Zacek and Marcy McVeigh took it over, and they were amazing. Ooh, I'll have to send them a link to see this so they can see me give them a plug, although they're not with it anymore either. But so I did a couple shows around Chicago, and we did one called Three Women, which played for like 2.5 years. We improvised it ourselves, and my boyfriend at the time, Cecil O'Neill, directed it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first women's show that anybody had ever seen back then. And so that show closed, and I ran out of money, and I had to move out of my apartment and moved in with a friend. And my father had died without ever us making any kind of contact. And there was something else really bad. Anyway, there's another bad thing. And I told you this white truck story, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
I stood there on the street in Chicago with the light filtering through the train tracks. And I looked, and there was this huge white truck coming pretty fast toward me. And I stood there and I thought, all I have to do is take one step and all this pain will be over. And things kind of went into slow motion, as they do, like in car accidents and stuff. And it was still coming, and something went into my brain that if you do this, Roberta, you're only going to have to come back and do it over without any of the advances you made in this lifetime. I had never studied Buddhism. I didn't know anything about it. It just hit me, not the truck, the idea. And so I walked away. And I'm such a caring person, Randy. Another thought I had was that poor man driving the truck. I can't do this to him. And so I decided to go to the center ring of Dante's Inferno, and I moved to LA for a few years. Tried to do theater and improv, and I ended up working at a magazine called Apparel Industry Magazine, a trade publication. And then I had to get, I mean, here's an example of LA. I was sleeping in my apartment one day. It was Sunday morning, about maybe 5 in the morning. And I heard this loud buzz go off, and it kept going and going. And I looked out the window, and there was a man standing there in a medium, not a dark blue suit, a lighter blue suit with a red tie and kind of reddish hair. And he had this big saw, and he was cutting down the tree in front of our entrance. And I called the owners the next day, and I said, why would you have somebody come at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday? And they said, what? We never sent anybody there. So I thought, I got to get out of here. I mean, this is really too weird in LA, and for lots of other reasons. And a friend of mine kept saying, Seattle. He said, there's more theaters per capita in Seattle now than any other city in the country. And so I took him up on it, and I just got in my car and drove north. And there was a woman at our magazine who was writing for Playboy. And she said, I got an article for them that I can't do. Do you want to do it? And I said, oh, yes, please. And so I did it. And shoot, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Nope, that's not it. This is the cover of the issue that I wrote my article for.
Wow.
Who more gorgeous than that could be? And this was my article, What Men Really Want from Women. So I interviewed men all the way up the California coast about what they wanted from women. And they all said, oh, I want a woman, who's smart and we're equals and blah, blah, blah. And then I would look at their girlfriends, and they were all kind of shy and inward. But it was great fun. People would tell me who were the Romeos in town, and I'd try to find them. And and ask them what they wanted. So I arrived on a rainy December night in 1979 in Seattle. And I drove in, the tallest building was the, what do you call it, tower?
Smith Tower.
Smith Tower. This is my friend Latifa. She's helping me. And it just hit me. It was like home. I'm home. And I just loved it from the minute I drove in. And I have now been here 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, you know, and I decided I wanted to do improv instead of scripted shows. And so I went to, I had written to Cornish and said I'd like to teach there, you know, and I said I was at Second City, I'd like to teach improv. And my thought was, God, wouldn't it be great when I go talk to the guy if he says, oh yeah, one of our teachers left, you can start in January. And that's exactly what happened. So I knew I was in the right place then. And I had such a hoot at Cornish. Here's two of my favorite guys from Cornish,
Oh, wow.
Jose and Brett.
Yeah.
Hi, Jose,
Yeah.
if you're there. He's a great jazz guru now.
That's great.
Oh, you've met Jose.
Pardon
me?
We were in a show that you directed together, Jose and I.
They were in a student show that I directed.
No, but,
Oh, that's right. Oh, how soon they forget.
When we moved into the Market Theater, I guess I should point that way. Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, he was in it and I directed it. Other people were in it too, but he was the best, of course.
Right.
So I started teaching at Cornish and I taught for a few years. And then the man who hired me was replaced by the man who left when I came here. So the man who I replaced became the head of the department. And he kind of let me go. A lot of politics in those things. And but bless their hearts, the other teachers told him that they wanted me back and they hired me back.
Right.
One of the sweetest moments. And I taught there for a long time and I had a great time.
Right.
And I started having auditions and in our first group, I cannot tell you how long I had to look for pictures of all these various things. This is our very first picture of None of the Above.
Wow.
And that sculpture is down at the airport and it was done by Larry Beck. And if you've never heard of him, he was the guy in Tim Robbins' book, Another Roadside Attraction.
Oh, Tom.
Or anyway, he was the artist in that. So this was us, and I'm not going to tell you their names. And then we had various companies. Here was another company, Floyd's in there now. And there's Paul Gladstone. God love him.
Yeah.
Being Superman on the car.
It's,
He was our token geneticist in the company.
David Silverman.
David Silverman. And she was from Off the Wall, the other group. She was just, and I think that's Rosie Cano. Oh my goodness. And Scott and Ed. Paul, of course, is no longer whinnying with us. God, I loved him.
Yeah, he was great.
Ah. And so we did Bumbershoot every year, and we did it like something like 12 years in a row. We did the first one, and what's his name? Who started it? Can't think of his name. Anyway, he asked me to come and see him, and I came and see him, and he said, "Would we be willing to be in this show that was going to be in the whole Seattle Center?" And I said, "Yeah." And we had great time at Bumbershoot every year because everybody was out for a good time. I'm looking for a picture with you in it because Randy became, but all I could find was old ones. Well, this is a funny one we did. We called it the Witless Sampler,
Right, right,
and everybody had their pictures on the bottom like
right.
pieces of candy. Wasn't that clever? Oh, and we did shows with Uncle Bonsai.
Yep, I remember those.
Oh, what else? Oh, there's an article about me in the Ballard Independent, and it says, Ballard woman has decades-long interest in improvisation. And so people used to call me Ballard woman.
So, with none of the above, and I guess for those people from Seattle who are watching this, what kinds of things were you doing? Obviously, we were doing Herald-related stuff, and that became increasingly more and more. But what were your impulses at the beginning in terms of forming the group? Was it just to do improv and promote these ideas, or did you have something else that you were trying to do that changed over time or didn't change?
I wanted to take over the city with this improv. No, I didn't have anything. I just wanted to do improv. Big fun improv. And it was great. It was great. We had so much fun. And there were 2 other improv groups at the time, and all of them were run by women. Haha. And they took me out for a drink one time, and when I first come there, and basically said to me, "Do you think this town is big enough for another improv group?" Do you remember, you guys? And I said, yes. And we were among the very few companies that actually improvised in front of an audience. Even Second City, we did a set show that we'd written and put together, and then we did the improvs after.
Right.
So, and this was when I lived in Ballard. In my yard, I got all the kids to dress up as clowns, and we used to do little clown shows. Aren't they sweet?
And then eventually in the early 80s, by the early 80s, then the groups began to kind of merge and come together and work together and play together. And again, through things like theater sports and Keith Johnston coming down and giving us that.
He first came, there was a kind of a festival of improvised arts, and he came for improv. I'll never remember the name, but there was a very famous dance guy who did improvised dance and a lot of improvised music. And we got somebody from Cornish to talk about that, and brought in, oh, I remember who it was. Anyway, moving right along, I can't remember his name, but they brought in this wonderful jazz trio from New York, and it was a weekend that was just magic.
Right. Huh.
So what happened to you after that, Roberta?
Yeah. Wow, Oh,
This was a wonderful paper called Common Ground that my friend John used to publish.
right.
And this was me in it with the title Chronic Fatigue Syndrome.
Right. And that ended up dominating a lot of the last few years, even
The
decades.
last 30.
Right. And
Oh, but before that happened, we had a Seattle Improv, Matt Smith and Ed Sampson and I, and we did a show with Seattle Mime. And here we all are together. So that was after None of the Above.
right. So coming back to the chronic fatigue and your life as an artist, as a performing artist and a teacher, and this might not be a fair question because it's, and again, you know, I guess hard to not overthink it, is what has been in hindsight now, like, and for today, so it doesn't have to be the answer we carve in stone. The worst things about chronic fatigue for you, 30 years of chronic fatigue, and is there any gift? Is there anything that you've benefited from or that you would not necessarily have encountered in your life had this not happened to you? You know, I guess kind of looking on the bright side, I guess. Or maybe there's not.
It's funny, I got it right after I went back to Chicago for Second City's 25th anniversary. Maybe that triggered it. Interesting question. Oh, what a cunning question again, Randy. I learned a lot. You know, I can't ever say, oh, I'm glad I got it because I learned this. But after about 20 years, talk about patience, I started getting better. I don't know why. I'd been to hundreds of doctors and healers and weird people and suffered some abuse at some of those places and never found an answer from anyone. Even went to Canada, saw a doctor up there because they had medicine that we didn't. And always I would, you know, once every 6 or 8 years, I would put my hands out and say, okay, universe, what am I supposed to be getting? And the answer always came back. Slow down. And when I remember to slow down, even now I'm rushing, I don't even have to be anywhere and I'm rushing and feel this pressure. And when I remember to slow down suddenly, it's like I'm in a different universe and I feel happier and I don't knock things over anymore. But in this show I wrote, which maybe will never be done, I moved up to Orcas for a while, learned how to take oil off the birds and stuff. And then I missed Seattle and I came back and I was in a class and I came out and there was a coffee shop and I was looking for a parking space. So I'm in the entrance and I'm looking and this car pulls up to me because there was no parking place. And this car pulls up beside me, a couple guys. And the driver says to me, "Wake up, you fucking old bitch," and then left. And I thought, oh, I'm so glad I got back to Seattle again. I really missed that. And so in the show, I was going to say, you know, my message was always slow down, slow down. And at the very end of the show, I was going to say, all right, what am I supposed to be getting? And it would say, wake up, you fucking old bitch. Can
draw
I
a
say
correlation-
fuck on this?
You draw a correlation though between that idea of slowing down and chronic fatigue giving you that impulse to slow down, and I know, at least for me, and I'm sure for you and any other teacher that's out there, spend so much time trying to get students to literally slow down doing improv.
Mm.
Everyone thinks it's about being witty and fast and doing all this stuff rather than kind of like, and even some of the stuff that's come along, Dell's slow comedy and other things um, that have happened over the years. And so it's just interesting that you've spent, in a way, maybe it's been the. I'm offering and saying, do you make a connection to improv also trying to get you to slow down?
You know, Dell had an exercise called the pause exercise, where if people are in a scene and one person says something and the other person has to pause for a long, long time before they answer, think of all these different things they might say, and then answer. And this person pauses for a long, long time. Because I think most of us, if we're on stage, we feel like we have to fill it with noise. And just looking at somebody, I was, looking at some Kurosawa movies lately, and there isn't even any sound sometimes. And this woman who was saying what should be done, it was on Turner or something, she said afterwards, I think they should have a little music in there or something. I thought, yeah, absolutely. That's how we think about improv. We got to be up there and going. And when you can just slow down and relax and let whatever comes up come up, and the other person, instead of answering immediately, although Keith has a lot of exercises where you answer immediately, but let it hit you physically,
Right.
and take it in, and then maybe do a take out to the audience, and then and have a nice slow answer. So I'm definitely on your side. Slow down.
Right.
I think we all need to do that, and I didn't, so it made me slow down. Um, um, and I can't say I'm glad that happened. It happened. So,
Right.
and I've had to deal with it, and I'm much better than I was. I won't say I'm totally cured, but I'm, able to do things well, like this interview again.
No, and speaking from personal experience, you are much better. Uh, and uh, and it is great that you're able to get out and do things like this. And I know you're not doing much teaching, if any teaching, right now. And so there's a whole group of Seattle improvisers who I think come across you through people like myself and other teachers. Oh, my dog's saying hello. And
Hi, dog.
um, but through I don't know if you can hear it, but she's barking Roberta Maguire. Roberta Maguire.
Oh, hi,
Anyway,
sweetie.
so as teachers, we bring you up, and obviously you've been very influential in terms of the Seattle scene and everyone who's doing it. So, what do you see? And I don't mean like how do you want to be remembered? It's more like, what do you see as a personal, lasting contribution that you're very proud of, even if it's something that is not necessarily going to be, shouted from the tops of the hills, but that one thing that you kind of go, I'm sure glad this happened, or I'm sure glad to see this thing develop in the Seattle improv scene, since you were so instrumental with other people to really get it churning during these late 70s, early 80s times.
Um, Well, I guess I feel good that I brought Dell's thoughts here so that I could share them with everybody, that it isn't just joke, 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 but you're two people in a space relating to each other like human beings. And boy, I haven't seen that performed by very many improv groups in the world anywhere. Um, and it's improv theater, not skits, improv theater. And I think the most wonderful thing for me has been to see people in classes and on stage who they're so scared when they come in. And because, like Dell, we do it, that your job on stage is to take care of each other. And if somebody's falling for some reason, you jump in and help them and save them. And to see people begin to come out and get that joy of just spewing. That's one of my students called it spewing. I'd say spewing. That's my favorite thing.
That's the take home. Spew less. Cool. Well, I want to thank you for doing this. And another thought, if you're willing and would like to at some point somewhere down the road, you know, I mean, your pictures and things like that, it would be great to get those documented or somewhere out there so that people can see some of this wonderful improv history that you have, both from Chicago as well as early Seattle history. So maybe you and I could get together and kind of, I don't know, you can point all those things out and go, that guy, that funny guy, and this woman who was really great.
You mean I couldn't do it alone? I'd have to do it with
You
you?
can do it alone. I'm just saying.
Joke.
Room, you might feel a little obligated to, you know, to keep.
You guys are great. And hi, Jill. Oh, and Kent is here doing this, and Jay. Oh, I love all you guys. You're still there, and you've been there. How many? 38
38 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
And Randy has been there since the beginning. He's the one who started it. I just think you must have set a record on someone who keeps. Of course, he probably couldn't find a better job anywhere. Nobody wanted him.
Well, not so far, but again, I mean, you know, again, I've said this before because we've done these interviews on stage before, but again, there's so much speaking for myself, but I think I could also speak for a lot of Seattle improvisers saying that we owe you a lot and learned a lot from you. And one thing is, I can't remember if I said this before, because when I found you, I was 15, 16. Yeah.
So you must be 43?
No, I'm 28. And but one of the things I really remember, and I've actually said this to people because it's very similar in my family, which was on my father's side of the family. None of the kids were treated like kids. Everyone was just treated like a person and an adult. And I remember being in your class and being really terrified. And you know, so many memories. And I think in the interview I did with Josh and Floyd, I was telling Josh, or Josh and I were talking about how we first met in one of your classes and doing this exercise together. But I remember never personally feeling nor seeing you, you know, talk down to people or dismiss them or anything like that. And for me, it was definitely things that kept me going forward, because at any moment, you know, who knows if I had a harsh criticism, which I've definitely had since then, you know, if I would have even stayed. And and it started. I just want to share this one thing. I know we're running a little bit over, but I'm not sure I've publicly told this story, and I must have told you, Roberta. I called you about taking your class because I had been dabbling in improv, not having much, feeling like I was getting much success, like I wasn't getting a lot. And so I remember calling you, and you basically were like, "Well, my class is full. Thanks." I was like, oh, okay. But the cool part for me, life-changing part for me was, I don't know, 3 weeks later, you took the time to call me back. You
Did
texted,
I?
yeah, and you said somebody dropped down to my class, so there's a spot. Would you like to come? And I was like, yes. And again, that was sort of a one of several very life-changing moments that occurred around that time. That and here we are today. So
And who's the teacher now, Randy? We go back and forth about
yeah.
who's the teacher now.
Anyway, but
Oh, thank
thank
you
you
for
for doing
saying
this.
that.
And I do want to again plug other things that we have coming up. We have classes that are starting next week. So if you'd like to have some of these experiences that Roberta was talking about in class, classes begin. Actually, I think classes began today, but we have them running all week long. So take those classes. We also have a series of shows that we're doing. Wednesday we're doing duos. Thursday we're doing a show called Wild Card, which is sort of mixed different long forms and improv. And now Friday and Saturdays we're doing campfire through Halloween. So we'll be closing on Halloween night. And in Campfire, we take your experiences with ghosts, the occult, UFOs, Sasquatch, recurring dreams, whatever you want, and we do original Campfire stories based on those. You will be able to submit a story if you're interested in being considered for the show, and you may or may not be interviewed on the show. It's totally entirely based on you. But tonight we have a special show because we're doing kind of a soft dress rehearsal to try some of these things out because we've never done the show on Zoom. So if you go to our webpage and go to Campfire tonight, I believe it's free, if not inexpensive. So and we also will take donations there. And last, before I forget, and this is actually personally for, well, it's for everybody, but it's also, I want Roberta to hear it. Kent, while we were talking, found the Studs Terkel Dell close interview. So I will be sending you
Hmm.
a link to that. But for everyone else who's watching on Facebook, just click on the link there. And actually, it's a great site because it's all these interviews with all these very interesting people. So I'll plug Studs Terkel as well at the very end.
And is there a minute I could say one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
Um, I went to one when you did people would get up and tell a story about their lives and you guys would improvise it. And I got up and I told about a very painful, serious thing that happened in my life. And they improvised it. I start stuttering when I talk about my family. Um, and they did some funny stuff, and it was kind of a revelation for me. Oh, even with that, you can step back and take an artist's view of it and see the humor.
Well, it's uh, and again, I know we're running over, so I want to let people go. But along those lines, it's when we talk about, or at least when I talk about doing serious improv, one of the first things I talk about it is comedy, because I said no matter how bad things get, every one of us has that moment where you just have to laugh. You just kind of go, really, and if you get rid of that moment, then it becomes this kind of maudlin sort of overindulgent work that happens on stage. So you want to have that little sprinkle of of humor that comes to it, or the humors, I guess. So
Yeah,
anyway,
get that little artistic distance from it.
yeah.
Look
Thank you, Roberta, for doing this. Love
Can't
you
we just go on
in general.
for a
So,
long time?
and, well, we'll do it. Maybe we can do another one on your.
I mean, I got all afternoon. I got nothing but time.
Well, I have to get ready for the show tonight, but
Oh, oh, haven't said those words in so long. I hope there's comes a day when I can say that again.
there will be. So, all right. Take care. See everybody next week. We'll have another one of these next Saturday at 1 o'clock. All right. And
So what do we do now? Am I off?
just stare at each other. No, no, we're still on, I think. But